Hi, I'm Johnny West, the founder of OpenOil, and this is my pitch video for a Shuttleworth Foundation Fellowship. What I'd like to do with the fellowship is to explore big data and open source techniques and how to apply them to the value chain across the world's extractive industries, and how to produce out of that a range of information processes and apps and communities which are able to take advantage of what is shortly going to be an avalanche of public domain data in and around these industries. I think we all know what the problems, the political, social and environmental problems are with the extractive industries around the world. Many of the images have entered popular culture: barefoot kids running in front of huge oil slicks in the Niger Delta, or corrupt Middle Eastern autocrats with all kinds of dodgy companies, and more recently the issues, of course, of taxation, corporate taxation and tax havens and so on have hit the headlines in a way which is creating momentum. But what perhaps isn't fully understood is how much this is an informational question that can be solved by big data, because the nature of all of the mismanagement and corruption is rent-seeking, and rent-seeking essentially is based on obscure costs and unknowable value chain. Once we're able to employ the best technologies, starting now with public domain data sets that are available, and preparing for the new wave which is coming with legislation that's already been passed, we're going to see radically different possibilities. The transparency movement's been around for 20 years, and it's achieved some phenomenal successes. Groups like Publish What You Pay, civil society, activist groups in 50, 60 countries. Through mechanisms notably like EITI, which mean that there are now 40 countries around the world that are committed in principle to some degree of transparency at the core of their extractive industries. But what we've seen at OpenOil, and what we've been trying to address for the past couple of years, is the fact that none of these processes have so far added up to public understanding of the way oil, gas and mining works, which is what you could call systematic. The ability for people in parliaments or people voting for those candidates in parliaments or media discussions or social media discussions to really get the whole picture. That's what's going to be available to us with big data. Just a couple of quick examples. The Dodd-Frank legislation passed in the States is going to, as of next year, compel all extractive companies to list all payments to governments everywhere in the world over $100,000. There's a similar bill just been agreed in the EU countries. And we're looking at really an order of dimension increase in the next 2 years. That's as far as mandatory disclosures go. And then we have the emerging norms of, for example, contracts between governments and oil companies. Somebody needs to go in, collate and systematize all of this information, marry the data sets in ways that make sense, make usable apps for targeted constituencies, and create genuine understanding. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about one project we've done as a beginning to this, which is the work on those oil contracts. Only 7 countries around the world have published their contracts with oil companies right now, but we found that nobody was able to understand these contracts who wasn't themselves a negotiating party. And I personally know of 2 countries in the global south whose finance ministers don't have access to these contracts. The problem with these contracts is that it's not a question of state autocracy. This is deep state autocracy. So what we did is we got We used the book sprint technique from open source software, very well established technique in open source software. And we got a dozen experts, contract lawyers, petroleum economists, people from the World Bank, development economists, environmentalists, to use the book sprint technique, sit down and write a book in 100 hours, and then put it out to the world under Creative Commons. And the response to that has been overwhelming. We've got input from activists and even government officials in upwards of 30 countries around the world. Why not do the same with financial modelling on those contracts? Open source the models. Produce some analysis which predicts how much we think a government might earn out of this or that contract, what the effects of raising or lowering the taxes might be, and publish the spreadsheets with it, so if somebody else has better data, they can improve it. The possibilities here are really endless. Right now, for example, we can link individual mines with geospatial data sets in Tanzania to the companies operating the licenses through EITI reports, to parent companies owned in New Zealand and the UK, to individual directors with their addresses in Limassol, Cyprus. And we can connect those people back down to the 15 village mayors and their communities around the mine, and make their contact details available if they feel they have any issues to take up with these industries that are dominating their world. Most of all, we want to engage a community of geeks around the world, specialised in these industries, that we can work with to map, to analyse, and to create a series of apps which lays bare the workings of these industries so that rent will simply cease to exist. We are 7 billion people in this planet, going on 9 billion people. We do need natural resources, but more than ever, we need them to be managed wisely and for the long-term public good. And that's what we would like to contribute to. That's what I would like to contribute to at OpenOil.